for time. In the CrossFit world, we do a lot of things for time. And so you keep track of that, either to beat yourself or to beat others who are around you. If it's not for time, there's a certain amount of time, and you're trying to get that work done in there. So Romans chapter 12, verse 10 says, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. And I think one big thing that you're going to get out of communication today is that great communication is selfless from your heart and your attitude. You're going into it not for what you can get out of it, but what somebody can get out of you. And so we're going to be selfless in our heart, in our attitude, in our mind as we're going in. Not trying to communicate to be heard and to get our way and things like that. So loving communication has a few characteristics we're going to talk about. One is that we make time for each other. We make time for each other. Those of you who have kind of already talked to each other and you said, yeah, man, like we'll talk about it when we get a chance. And then how many times do you feel like that chance doesn't come? Like a few days later, you're like, oh yeah, as soon as we're able, as soon as we get a chance. And so we make time to talk. Just like in a CrossFit workout, when you rush into it, not only are you dead by the end of it, but you also start fatiguing really fast. And then the movements get inefficient, they get incorrect, or they're not done, or we miss some things. Or worst case scenario, you end up getting hurt because you're trying to rush it, trying to get it done too quick. And that's what happens a lot of times in our communication. If you just try to do it really fast, like not make time for it and rush into it, you end up making it worse. You end up hurting the relationship. You end up not having time to finish things, and so you kind of get in the middle of it. And so you want to make time. And oftentimes, that's how we handle communication. We have it on our to-do list, but our schedules that are already full kind of get in the way with taking kids here or there, or squeezing in the gym, or what's on TV, different things. You name it. All these different things that if we're not intentional to set time to communicate, something always gets in the way. We try to squeeze it in as quick as possible so that we can move on to the next agenda. We communicate haphazardly, incorrectly, and oftentimes, unlovingly. Or we just don't communicate at all. We kind of see each other and we bump into each other, and then the next thing you know, we're going to bed, we're going to sleep. So, loving communication has to begin to become a priority in our lives. And so the way to do that and start is to schedule it. And sometimes people think, well, man, I don't want to schedule it. Like, I want it to be organic. But it's still not happening. And so scheduling it is probably going to be the most important thing that you can do. Open your smartphone. Put it in your calendar. Put a day, put a time, and a place where it can happen, just like you would any other appointment. And so we're glad that you're here today, because this is an important aspect of your relationship, especially if you feel like in your relationship you keep going in a crazy cycle of, we're happy together, it's going good, we love each other, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow with each other, and then something crashes, something happens, there's the argument, there's the miscommunication, there's the blow up, and then you're right back, I want to kill this person, what did I do when I married them? And then all of a sudden you're back around to like, oh, this is so wonderful. And so communication is probably the key to breaking that crazy cycle that's going on. So let's move to the second characteristic of loving communication, that leads ultimately to intimacy in a lot of different ways.
So in your outline, if you're filling in the blanks, it's we make time for each other. And the second one is we learn the art of listening. And the thing is that some people may more naturally listen well, but it's no excuse because we can all learn to listen better. And that's why we're here today. So listening is an art that is motivated by, like Kelly said, that I'm seeking to understand you. And this is where a lot of couples go wrong, Kelly and I included, is that we go into an argument or into a conversation, even if it's about, my day or something good or whatever, and I'm wanting that person to hear me. I'm wanting to communicate something. I want them to understand me. When the reality is that the Bible teaches us, as we put other people above ourselves, is that we need to seek to understand the other person before being understood. And so think about that for a minute. If you were to go into every conversation that you have, and especially an argument, how can I seek to understand this person? What does that look like for me to understand them and where they're coming from first, and then seek to be understood? Because I guarantee you, as you practice that, how you approach your next statement or question, once you understand that person, it's probably going to change a little bit. Your approach is going to change, your perspective is going to change. So seek first to understand and then be understood. And we can do this by learning to listen. To listen. That's why they say, right, that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Because we need to listen twice as much as we speak. But how often do we practice that? Listening means leaning in. Like we can listen with our bodies. Body language says a lot, doesn't it? How many of you guys are like, okay, you said that, but you were doing this, or your face was doing this, and I'm not really sure that it was genuine, or that's really what you're communicating, or maybe it was sarcastic, right? And you're questioning it because of their body language. So you're speaking with your body, and you can do this by leaning in when someone's talking to you to show them that you're listening. Another way to do that is to make eye contact. Look into that person's eyes when they're speaking. Kelly and I have wrestled with this for many years because, as you all know, we talked about this yesterday. Kelly's ADHD, he's all over the place, and he's gotten a lot better at making eye contact. But for me, it came a little more natural. For him, he has to really think about it. Like in any conversation, many of you have had conversation with him and you're like 2 seconds and he's gone, like he's on to the other thing, right? A squirrel. So he has really come a long way in just being intentional when I start to speak to him to look into my eyes. And a great example of this was just recently because he has this little table by his chair, his recliner chair, and it's really tiny. So he's like fitting his Kleenex box and his water bottle and whatever else is on the table. And we started to talk to each other the other day, and he like had to literally take the bottle off and remove everything so he could look at me. But that made me feel listened to. Just him removing those obstacles and leaning in and making eye contact with me. Another way to do that is to clear your mind. Like a lot of us, we're guilty of when the other person's talking, we're thinking of how we're going to respond, right? How we're going to make our case. And the reality is that we need to just ask for God's help. Say, God, help me to table that, to put that aside, to help me to really listen, to hear what they have to say. We have to clear our minds of our own agendas, of our own responses, to be able to truly listen to that person. And that may take time. It may be, there's a conversation that needs to be had, right? And your mind's just spinning. This is what I'm going to say. This is probably how they're going to respond, right? We're just going at it. Maybe take that to the Lord and pray and say, God, calm my mind. Give me openness to not only hear from you, but to hear the other person before you go into that conversation. Pray about it. Meditate, do some yoga if you need to. Put on some soft music. Whatever that is as you're going into that conversation. And like Kelly talked about, we do need to schedule conversation because it doesn't just happen, right? We know this. I mean, we've lived long enough to know that we can say we're going to talk and it just doesn't happen. It's just like exercise, right? You have to make time to exercise. You have to put it on your schedule and you have to be accountable to that. So come up with a schedule. Keep each other accountable. And then you can prepare yourself as you're going into that planned, scheduled conversation. So lean in, make eye contact, clear your mind before you enter the conversation, and focus on what they are saying. Not just what you think their motives are, not just the words, but the heart behind it. And pray for God's wisdom, because He knows our hearts. And oftentimes, we're all guilty of it, right? We can all admit it. We don't always communicate what's in our hearts well. And we might mislead some people into what we're really thinking and feeling. So pray that God will open your heart and mind so that you can really hear not just words, but their heart behind it. And then finally, let your spouse know you heard them by repeating back what they said. And we're going to walk you through a communication technique that I use all the time in mentoring to help you do that. But if someone says, I had a great day, my coworker even complimented me, and my boss took me in the office and said, that I'm doing great and that I met my quota, whatever, and you might say, oh, so your boss really complimented you and your coworker really, that's awesome. You see how I just repeated back what they said? And it doesn't have to be word for word, but it helps that person to know that you're listening. You actually heard what they said, you understood it, and so you're repeating it back. So again, if you're taking notes, lean in, make eye contact, clear your mind, focus on what they're saying, and repeat back what you've heard.
Awesome. And then your next big blank there, we will pursue deeper levels of communication. Deeper levels of communication. It's amazing how people can be married 10, 20, 30, 40 years and still be on kind of like a low level of communication. So just because we're talking and listening to each other doesn't mean that we're experiencing loving communication or, that highest level of intimacy that could come from great communication. We have to be intentional to go beyond the surface. And I believe the first step is understanding that there are different levels of communication for intimacy. So levels of communication, number one there is small talk. Small talk. Oh, it's so sunny outside today. Small talk. The schedules. What's going on at 10? What's going on tonight? What are the kids doing? And then two, and usually that's just one-sided, just talking. Two, factual. So you share some facts. You talk about the budget. Tell them how to do something, how to get something done, the directions to somewhere, some factual information. Really no heart in it. And then number three, ideas and opinions. Your opinion on something that's going on in the world today. What you think about it. Decisions that were made by other people, how you feel. Ideas that you have to do something new, to start something new, to go somewhere new. And then four, again, just a whole nother level, is emotional. How do you feel? How did you feel about a decision that was made? How did someone make you feel about the circumstances that are going on in your life or that you were involved with, that you were a part of, maybe that both of you were a part of. Emotions about each other, maybe something that somebody did or said, and it could be good, it could be positive, or it could be on the negative side. But when you start talking about those emotions and how you feel, then that takes the relationship to a whole nother level. And then lastly, spiritual, praying together, sharing how God is speaking to you. When was the last time, if ever, that you asked your spouse, hey, what's God doing in your life? How do you feel like God's speaking to you? And you get on a whole nother level when you start talking about the spiritual aspect of your life. And if it's not a conversation that you've ever had, then this week, today, would be a great day to start. To be able to make each other think about that, because you have to stop, you have to listen, you have to think about what's going on in your life. And then you're sharing some more intimate things, some more personal things in your life. So we have to be intentional to move from one level to the next. And during that time that we have set aside to communicate, ask yourself if you're beginning to share your emotions, your ideas, your opinions about things, and even things on a spiritual level. And if not, then we're going to start going there with each other today, this week.
And again, it goes back to we have to schedule, we have to make space for these conversations. As you get in a deeper level of intimacy, you can see it's going to take more time, right? It's going to take time and energy and effort. And a lot of times we might need help expressing how we feel. And that's okay. You know, you can Google like a feeling wheel. That's what I use a lot of times to help people, you know, identify feelings, like not just sad, mad, and glad, you know, like I was devastated, or I was so excited, or I was livid, you know, like what are those emotions, and really sharing that with each other, but also on a spiritual level. Like if you're going to dive into how someone is doing spiritually, it's going to take space and time to do that. And so Kelly and I, we have really struggled with this, and there has been seasons in our life where we've just been go, 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 go. And when we first got married, you know, as we've shared before, you know, Kelly was full-time teaching, coaching cheerleading. He was an FCA huddle leader at his school. He was a part-time youth pastor. Like we had 2 toddlers at home for a while. You know, I'm taking care of the home and all that. And we would just barely see each other, okay? Then we moved to Oregon, and he takes a full-time youth pastor job, and we are both doing ministry, like at the church. And you guys know, if you've ever attended established church, especially a large church, you're talking like we had 2 services on Sunday. We had a Sunday night service. We had a Wednesday night service. We had Monday board meetings and other meetings. We had Tuesday night was our drama team meetings and practice. We had youth meetings. We had trips with kids. We lived in Oregon, so we got to go snowboarding and we got to go whitewater rafting and all kinds of fun stuff. But we were going on trips with these kids like at least once a month somewhere that we drove, and then another time a month somewhere local, just something fun. Like we were constantly going and moving. And then you add like Joshua's activities, like he was in the choir and he had school stuff going on, and he was doing children's activities with the church, and we were taking him here and there. And then we tried to add a dog into that, which didn't work out very well. We actually ended up having the dog people call us because the dog was barking and being a nuisance because we were gone so much. And we realized like we cannot have a pet at this season in our life. And we ended up, that's a cool story, he ended up going to a Boys and Girls Club and doing ministry, we said, with kids. They trained him and everything. It was
Our
really
dog
cool.
went into ministry.
Yeah, it was really cool how God worked that out. But anyway, it was a really tough season. And so we have learned over time that we have got to make that space. Because if we don't, that space will be dictated to something else. Whether it's us or our boss or a friend or CrossFit, right? Or something, going on. And when we we started to make that space. What we did to help us to take our conversation to a deeper level is we came up with questions that we were going to ask. And what we did is we found space once a week. It was a Wednesday evening there for a while. And we asked these questions. Again, Google it. Google great conversation questions, okay? Deeper communication, whatever. It's out there. But this is literally what we asked each other every week. This is what we said. We said, what is your highlight this week? What is your downer this week? What is God speaking to you? What do you have coming up this next week? And how can I pray for you? And those were just the basics. Of course, it led to other conversation and other questions, but we made sure that we were going to ask these questions every week, once a week. And we set aside time to do that. And I'm telling you, it took our relationship to a whole nother level. We learned so much about each other. And it's so crazy how you can go through a whole week and not even know what your partner, the most important person in your life, right, has even experienced internally. Like if they've had a really hard week or a great week or what God's doing. Like we're so neglectful to some of the most important relationships in our life. And just like I talked yesterday, I said so many times we do mission statements, goals, that sort of thing for business, for ministry. But how often do you do that for your marriage? Like, have you ever asked the question, what's our mission? Like, where do we want to be in 5 years? Like, what are our goals? What would our relationship look like? What would we be doing together? Right? Like, ask yourself those questions, because I'm telling you, like we talked about yesterday, this relationship has the potential to glorify God more than any other relationship. Because God created it that way. It reflects Jesus and his bride, the church. Look at it in Ephesians 5. And so we've got to put in the time, energy, effort to really grow and see this move to another level.
We have to lose all the excuses that we could come up with to not do that. I know for me, like when we first started, my thought was like, this is so robotic. Like same questions every week after week. And but I realized that I needed that. My whole life, I don't remember, even looking back now, I don't remember until college, probably 19, 20 years old, I don't remember ever sitting down and having a conversation with someone, like an intimate conversation with someone. Like, I never sat down with my dad or my mom. It was, how was your day? Good. Where you going? Skating. What are you going to do? I don't know. I remember my dad saying many times, do you have any words? Because it was just, yeah, and that's all, that's the way I communicate. Usually one word stuff. So for me, the questions I needed it. And even though it was the same questions each week, they're open-ended. And so there's different answers. And I started looking forward to this time where I can ask Polly these questions and she can add. I know she's going to ask me. And so it definitely becomes something that you start to look forward to, because really inside of each of us, we're built and wired and designed for intimate relationships. And so when you start to be intentional to do it, you get more out of it. You get way more out of it. So D in your notes there, we'll learn to handle conflict well. It might be easy to communicate when things are going well, when we all get along, when the bills are all paid, the kids are following God, life is great. But what about those times when you're financially strapped, the kids are going crazy, and life just stinks. We're all going to experience challenging times. It's during these times that we need to be more intentional than ever to have great communication. So maybe you're experiencing one of those challenging seasons now, and you feel like you can't talk about anything because if you do, someone's going to lose it or possibly even leave. Romans chapter 14 verse 19 says, "Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace." Every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification, to building each other up. We're challenged to do what leads to peace. You should pursue to have peace with everyone, as it depends on us, especially with our spouse. We can't put it off. I believe to have love and peace in our marriage, we have to stop blaming and start taking responsibility for our part of it, for our own stuff, which is the first step to making peace. We're responsible for our part of the conflict, no matter how big it is, no matter how little it is. Remember, the little things add up eventually to big things. But we're so busy blaming the other person for the conflict and how we're acting and how they're acting that we can't get anything else through. So Polly has a great tool, really, that she uses with couples, hundreds of couples probably over the years. And again, you can go into this and say, that's robotic, like that seems silly. But what your relationship is so important that you have to get to a place where your heart is whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. I want the relationship to be the best that it can be. I want it to last forever. And so this is a great resource, a great tool to help you begin to communicate. And even though it may seem robotic at the beginning, as you get into it, it does become more organic and more natural.
And so, like Kelly said, it might feel strange at first when you have like this template to go by. And it doesn't mean it has to be exactly that for the rest of your life. But if you are not having effective communication and you feel like that you're arguing more than making productive steps in your communication, then I would say yes, you need to do this for a while in order to help you have effective communication. Because obviously communication is to move us forward, right? It's proactive. We're to help our relationship become the best it can be, to understand one another, to be able to work together to accomplish the goal. But if we're not having effective communication, then we're not effectively moving forward. And like I tell people all the time, you're either growing or you're declining. Like there's no stagnant. Like you just don't stay somewhere. Like you've got to grow in a relationship, whether it's with God, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your marriage, whatever that is, or that relationship in reality is declining. It's being neglected and it's probably going in the opposite direction. So again, make time for this. You'll notice on your little card and in your notes, there's what's called a love talk. First of all, you'll notice on the blue card, there's effective communication. Speaking clearly, that's huge. This is going to help you do that. Eliminate unfair tactics. That's not, excluding words like never and always, right? Like you jerk, like accusing people, right? Assuming on people's motives, eliminating unfair techniques. That's going to help you do this. Creating a safe environment. Again, I encourage you to find space and time to talk, but it's got to be a safe environment that you've agreed on. If it's not best for you to meet at a restaurant, then don't do that. Maybe it needs to be in the confines of your home because some of the things you need to talk about is sensitive information, and you might need to cry about it or, be upset, and that's okay. You want to create a safe space for that. So talk about that. What does that look like? And it may be different depending on the conversation.
Location.
Take time out. If you feel like your conversation is getting too heated, that it's becoming destructive instead of productive, then take a time out and just say, you know what? let's talk about this tomorrow after dinner. Set a time. Don't just leave it hanging because it won't happen. Set a time. Say, let's cool off. You know, I need a timeout. And just agree that you're going to give each other permission to do that so that you don't say something or do something that's more destructive than helpful. And again, listening, which we've talked about, seek to first understand before being understood. And this technique is really going to help you to fulfill some of those effective communication items there. So Love Talk, it's LUV, and it stands for listen, understand, and validate. And what you're going to do is you're going to follow this template. I feel blank, because feelings are important. So we're going to learn how to express our feelings and identify those. When you blank, and I need for you to blank. Now what happens is, generally, not always, but again, our gender differences come into play. Yesterday we talked about a lot of that, like how our differences cause conflict. We talked about expectations and stuff like that. So for this communication, generally what happens is women, and I'm guilty of this, we spider web it. You've probably heard that before. Like, I've got this issue going on, but it like relates to this issue, and then it goes to this issue, and then when I'm trying to communicate, like it becomes like all this jumbled mess. And the guy is just like paralyzed because it's like too much information. Like they don't even know where to start or what we've even said, right? And then the guy, generally what happens is they aren't sure how to express themselves, and they don't even know what a feeling word is.
I need the wheel.
Yeah, he needs the feeling
I need
wheel.
the wheel.
If you find yourself saying things like, I feel like, okay, then you're not saying a feeling word. Like if you say, I feel like you just do this all the time. You see, that's not a feeling. A feeling is I feel angry when you don't take out the trash regularly. And I need for you to take out the trash regularly, right? So see, you've got to come up with a feeling word, guys, okay, to help her understand. And I'm telling you, women are generally, again, it could be reversed. I've seen some couples it's reversed. Generally, we're very emotive and we're very sensitive to emotions. And so for us to understand that part of you is very helpful. And it's helpful for the relationship. And sometimes we might get it wrong and we want to get it right, okay? So I feel blank when you blank, and I need for you to blank. Ladies, this is going to be hard, I know, but you need to keep it very simple. And if there's more to that same circumstance that needs to be talked out, then you break it down. You break it down in separate statements that address specific actions, okay? Or words that they've said, whatever that is. And you can do a love talk, you can go back and forth many times. But this is how you're going to communicate it, and then the other person is going to repeat it back. They're going to say, oh, okay, so what I hear you saying is that you feel angry when I don't take out the trash regularly, and you need for me to take the trash out regularly. Yes, you heard that right. And once we do that, again, it could go back and forth multiple times if there's different aspects of it. And I would say practice this with something very simple, a simple conflict, before you get into the deeper ones, okay? Just practicing it. So once I've shared that, he's repeated it back, then we go into what's called a win-win situation, okay? We have to come up with a win-win situation. It can't be a win-lose. It's got to be a win-win. And this might take some time. Great example, okay? There was a couple that when they went to church, they were always late. And the husband wanted to be 15 minutes early. So there was this conflict, and they just couldn't solve it. And they were always arguing on their way to church because they're running late, and he's frustrated. She feels stressed. So their love talk looks something like this. She might say, well, I feel stressed when you're telling me I need to hurry up, and I need for you to be patient with me. Okay? And he repeats that back. His side of that might be, well, I feel angry when you're still doing your hair and I'm in the car waiting, and I need for you to wake up earlier. Okay, that might be what you're saying. Okay, I repeat that back. But then you get to the end and you have to come up with a win-win. You can't just leave it at we're communicating how we feel and what we need. Well, their win-win was this. She said, well, I'm getting myself ready and I'm getting the 2 kids ready. What if you got the kids ready? And he was like, yeah, I can do that. I can get the kids ready. He's like, I'll get the kids ready as long as when we're ready, we're headed out the door. If you're not ready, you're giving us permission to go on to church and you'll meet us there. And she's like, yeah, okay, I can do that. Because she felt confident that she was going to be ready on time. And she had motivation now to be ready on time because she wanted the family to ride together. So what they did is she just focused on getting herself ready, gave her more time. He focused on himself and the kids. They got ready, went out the door, and she got herself in the car, and they got to church early because they worked together to come up with a win-win. I'm telling you, it is sometimes the most simple, mundane things that will hinder your relationship because you're arguing about it all the time. Whether it's someone doesn't do the laundry or, they're not spending enough time with the kids or like for us, the garbage, it's like whatever that is. And of course there's other things you need to discuss that may be bigger, heavier issues. And I encourage you to do that. Maybe even do it with a third party if that would help. But I'm telling you, as you begin to communicate this way, it's going to be more productive rather than destructive, okay? So for Kelly and I, we literally struggle with this garbage issue, okay? Like he would forget to take out the garbage. And one morning, I was at home in my robe still, and because of course you guys know he leaves early, right? Coaching CrossFit and all that jazz. And I hear the garbage truck. And it's like one of those weeks, it's like, we've got to get rid of this garbage, right? He probably forgot the week before. And so here I am, I hear the garbage truck coming, okay? And I'm like, crap, I gotta get the garbage. So I run out the back door. We have a big lab chow at the time who would escape our yard. And so my husband had innovatively put concrete in the ground and then put this chain link fence and secured it on our vinyl fence at the time just to keep the dog in, okay? So it was almost impossible to get the gate open and to get out of the yard. So here I am grabbing the garbage can, I'm wrestling with the gate, trying to get it open, trying to hold the dog back, and I'm like cussing him in my mind, right, the whole time. And I'm like pulling the garbage out, barely make it out to the curb, and the garbage gets picked up. Well, guess what happened the rest of that day?
We made love.
I was rehearsing that over and over in my mind. Like, can he just think and remember the garbage? Like, I have to like wrestle a fence and a dog and all this. Does he realize like what he's put me through and how this just started my whole day off like with a bad attitude, right? And I'm just hashing it in my mind. And so by the time he gets home, guess what happens? I'm going off, right? And I'm like, dude, do you realize, like, just taking out the garbage, how it would change our lives? It would change my day. And that it would change our conversation right now, right? Like, I'm just going off. And back then, I would accuse him. So I'd be like, well, you just don't care. right? Like if you cared, then you would take the garbage out. Like it's one thing around the house that you have to do. I wash the dishes. I clean the house. You see what I'm saying? And then it just gets into this whole like character, just condemning him just because he didn't take out the garbage. Well, eventually we had a love talk. And it was, like I said, I feel stressed when you don't take the garbage out regularly, and I need for you to take the garbage out regularly.
When you feel stressed, like don't take the garbage out, you need for you to take it out regularly.
Yes, yes. Is there anything you need to say around that issue, Annie?
I feel disrespected when you complain about me not taking the garbage out multiple times. And I need for you to just trust that I'll take it out.
Right? Okay. So you feel disrespected when I tell you multiple times and complain about you not taking the garbage out, and you need for me to trust you to take it out. Yeah. Okay? You see how this works? And then we come up with a win-win. Well, our win-win, thank God we have smartphones, because we said,
She ain't
okay.
got no smart husband.
We said, okay, we're going to both put reminders in our phone. 7 o'clock the night before, okay? We talked this out, and he was like, yeah, I can do that. If you have not taken the garbage out by 7 o'clock that evening, I'm going to tell you to take the garbage out. But I'm not going to say anything before that time, okay? And he's like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And if I haven't done it by 7 o'clock, you tell me. And he agreed. I'll get up, I'll stop whatever I'm doing, and I'll go take the garbage out. And I tell you, it changed our week because it's very rare that he does not take the garbage out now. And in the past, it was like a regular thing. Like it was the exception that he remembered to take it out without me nagging him about it, right? And now he's taking it out on the regular, and we're not arguing about it. You see how that works? So we got to be proactive about this and productive about this. And that includes making time, right, in our schedules. We've got to do that. We've got to learn the art of listening. We've got to pursue these deeper level of communication. And we've got to learn to handle conflict well. And the love talk is a great tool for that. Anything you want to add?
So your homework is to take that big old pretty bookmark you got there, and today, before you go to bed, what is one thing that you can love talk tonight? What is one thing that you can love talk? And then go through it. Use your cheat sheet. Do it with your daughter if you need to. And make it happen.
And so you guys that were here yesterday, remember we listed out some expectations, your top 10 expectations. So you're going to love talk each one of those. Okay? It doesn't mean all at once at the same time, but my challenge for you over the weeks to come is to love talk every single one of those. Okay? And come up with win-wins for those expectations. And I'm telling you, it's going to change your marriage. Amen? Okay.
Amen. Let's pray. God, thanks for getting us in here this morning, for just teaching us how to communicate the way that you want us to grow our relationship with you, also grow our relationship with each other. God, in our house and outside of our house too, with people that you just have brought into our lives. So Lord, we love you. Continue to move through Move Daytona, God. Use us to reach this city for you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. You guys are awesome. Hey, you gonna stand up, grab a chair.